a gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for January 22nd. Man, why did 22nd sound weird in my head for a reason? 2024, for the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, Palworld faces criticism while selling 5 million copies, and 343 shifts support for Halo Infinite. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host to Game Mess Mornings. It's Lex Luddy, everybody. Lexi, how are you doing?
Well, but never say I don't do anything for this website, because I finished lectures about 15 minutes ago and I ran home because someone messaged me during my lecture today and was like, hey, are you free today? I don't have anyone lined up. And
That's
I was
right.
like, I guess I am now.
Hell yeah.
If my face is red and I'm out of breath, it's your fucking fault.
Hell yeah, let's go. And I'll do it again, too. Listen, I was too busy thinking about sports and the Lions all weekend to think about...
You've been really busy.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. It's been a good time over here. But no, thank you for doing this, Lexi. I appreciate it. Glad you were able to make it home. Glad you didn't get hit by any cars or get blown away, apparently. Is it still windy right now?
It's less windy now. It is like still pretty windy for Galway, because Galway's basically constantly windy because we're right on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean.
Yep.
And it's like the first thing that the sea reaches is us. It's also like a fucking nightmare of a place to play sports. The rugby team here, Connacht, they play on top of a hill overlooking the city. And whenever teams come here, their kicking percentages go way the fuck down. It's hilarious. Like, the kicker for Connacht is considered a really good kicker, but his kicking percentages are some of the lowest in the league because the weather here is so bad, and it just swirls. There's like a really famous video of a guy kicking a goal in rugby. It goes through the posts, and then the wind blows it back out of the posts again. And they're like,
fun.
Does that count? Does that count as a score? So yeah, it can get pretty windy here. But yeah, I'm okay at the moment. There's going to be another storm tonight. But Grubb, I want to hear about your Lions.
Yeah. The Detroit Lions are going to the NFC Championship game, something they've never done before. That is pretty wild. Well, I mean, back when it was just the NFC, before they merged. So like the 1940s, I think they did that. They won 2 playoff games in the same playoffs for the first time ever. In my lifetime for sure, and definitely the first time in like 70 years. And it is very exciting. They're playing really well. The games are very entertaining. And if they win this next one, they go to the Super Bowl. So definitely something I never really thought I would see in my lifetime. And it's very fun to see people jump on the bandwagon. Like the more the merrier. Like, we're fine with that. Go ahead and hop aboard. Like, this is definitely like America's team, where it's easy to root for them because they've been lovable losers for so long, and actually just kind of miserable losers for so long. And so to see them kind of come together and play this kind of football that is, they just work really hard and they believe in each other. And like all these dudes are like, we're so tough, but every single player on the team's always about to cry because they just love each other so much. It's an easy team to root for. So, yes, very exciting.
You should get a sports team like mine, Munster, who managed to only win one of their 4 matches in the European tournament and still qualify for the round of the last 16, which doesn't feel great.
That's the Green Bay Packers. That's the Packers. No matter what they do, they just stumble into success constantly. It's infuriating, and they're our biggest rivals. I don't think we're their biggest rival, but they're definitely our biggest rival. And I'm gonna say we and ours. I know that makes Turbo Sean mad, but I'm not on the team. I can't help it. I love them.
You're on the team. I get it.
Yep, exactly.
Hey, you're the 16th man, as they'd say in rugby.
Yes, exactly. There's a 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th man ahead of me, but yes, the 16th man. Yeah. That's where I'm at. All right, you know what? Let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings, or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Palworld has sold 5 million copies in 3 days. This is from Eric Hiddleback Furu at Game Reactor. Grown tired of reading headlines about Pokemon with guns selling incredibly well and breaking records on Steam yet? No? Well, that's good, because the developers at Pocket Pair have announced Palworld has managed to sell more than 5 million copies since it launched as early access on Friday. That's just half of what Pokemon Scarlet and Violet did in its first week, but it's worth reiterating this is a new IP, and that this number doesn't include people playing it as part of Game Pass through that subscription service. The team isn't resting on its laurels and just enjoying the success, however, as we're told fixes for lost save files, bugged multiplayer, and more are coming. Yes, this game is taking over the world. The idea that this is just like half of Pokemon, so like that should put stuff in perspective. That doesn't. This is a massive success right out of the gate. Has had over 1 million concurrent players. Has the second most concurrent players for a paid game ever all time on Steam, only behind PUBG when PUBG did that nutso 3.5 million concurrent players or whatever it was. This, more concurrent players than Elden Ring ever had, more concurrent players than Grand Theft Auto 5 has ever had. It is wild. And yet a lot of it just kind of makes sense. It's people love ARC style games. Survival games are huge on Steam. Mash that up with like a friendly veneer of Pokemon, and it's like, oh yeah, duh, of course this would do well. How are you feeling about Palworld at the moment, Lexi?
I think that game looks shit.
Yeah.
I get that like people like those survival games, but Jesus, I find them all so boring, and like I just don't have whatever gene it is that like people get really into Rust or Ark or whatever it is. I don't have it in me to like grind against like unfun mechanics for 10 hours to eventually be able to unlock some like actual base building stuff or actual interesting stuff, and then it all gets wiped away. I'm like, why would I keep doing this? This is miserable. I think it's super interesting that like this game is doing so well when it hasn't sold itself as that. It's sold like you watch that launch trailer, and that launch trailer is very heavily like, oh, this is Pokemon with guns. It's not. It's a survival game where the enemies you're fighting happen to look like Pokemon, and like that's where the Pokemon relationship comes in. We'll definitely get to it later in news, but like, yeah, I don't feel great about this game. Whenever I look at it, I'm just like, yeah, I don't feel good looking at this. I don't feel good being a part of this. I just don't think it's a very interesting game, ultimately. Like, I know people are extremely angry about it. People are either extremely angry about it or extremely defensive about it. I'm just like, I couldn't be bothered spending like this much time and brain power on it, because there's more interesting things to talk about. There's more interesting things to play. I just don't find it very engaging as a game.
Yeah, I'm mostly in the, hey, I played 2 hours of this on UPF, and then over the weekend, I did start up my own server and started playing again. So that,
no, I know where this goes. I've seen you and PUBG. This doesn't end well, Grubb. Yeah,
well, listen, I don't have any love for it like I do for PUBG, but I'm curious about it. I'm going to get in there and see what people are finding. And here's what I found. It is, when you're playing by yourself and you are just going through like the tutorial list there at the beginning, because that's not how I was playing. Jan was doing that stuff, and he was on camera on UPF. So let him handle that, and then I was doing my normal UPF like goof offs, just like see what I could do as quickly as possible. And it's, I got the glider, and that was fun. But that was like, mostly I was like, this is just kind of nothing. There's not much here that is hooking me. Once you start going through the checklist tutorial at the beginning, you can see it's like, okay, I'm just doing procedures, and they're all pretty pleasant to do. They're like really mostly pretty easy, and each thing unlocks a whole bunch of new things usually, and everything kind of hooks into one another in a way that makes sense. So, you go find your monster, your pal, and you bring them back, and you're like, okay, well, what can I do with this? Well, immediately they're like, well, yeah, you can keep them with you, but just put them in this slot on your base, and then they're going to start doing all this work for you. And then they run around and they do the work, and they're picking up stones, and they look cute and funny. I get why people are like latching onto that. I don't know if there's like much more to it beyond that. Like, this is not going to be the kind of thing where it has a deep meta that people come back to. I think it's going to be, honestly, its success shouldn't be too surprising, because I think it's kind of falling in the same sort of pleasant space as something like Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley, I think, is a much better game than this, but this is definitely like scratching similar itches in people's brains, where they're just like, I like going through this process and having a goal and getting to that goal, and getting to that goal actually unlocks new things I want to accomplish, and now that's my new goal. And this game definitely has a lot of that stuff in it, and it's really figured it out. Now, in terms of like, is this like a long-term success? I don't know. I don't really care. Honestly, the game sold 5 million copies. That would be enough for just about any game.
It doesn't need to be a long-term success anymore. They've made a shitload of money.
Made a ton of money.
If they sold that much and they're self-publishing, they have made a lot of money very quickly. If this game does, like, if people are like in 2 months' time, oh, game dead, they don't really care. They can try another game. They can make a new game. This can never come out of early access and it'll be fine. Or they can support it for ages. It can grow for another little bit, and then they can maintain with whatever community they have. I'm curious, as you've been playing it now, does it seem like something that they'll be able to monetize long term? Because I didn't see like any microtransaction stuff in there, and I'm sort of curious how a game that's in early access for that long of a time, continues to make money for a company like that.
There's definitely going to be ways for them to monetize. They could do a lot of cosmetics for sure. That would be the easiest thing, or the thing that would be the easiest to like get people behind in terms of the community. But they have a lot of options. They could just they could do the ARC model and sell full-on expansions.
I thought you meant put Vin Diesel in it.
Well, listen, the Vin Diesel arc is coming for us all eventually, of course. But I think they probably just. That would make sense, because that's kind of like how Pokemon works these days too, and I think they would like want to be evoking these things where it's like, okay, here is a new region, and you're going to be able to go here, and here's a whole 100 new pals, and $30, please, or I guess $15, because the base game right now is $30. But that's they have a long time to figure that out, because they probably will be in early access for all of this year, I would expect. No, why would you rush that out? They're still kind of getting base mechanics to base functionality. A lot of the mechanics are there and are working for a fully fleshed out game. It's just making sure that the headaches aren't there in terms of these save issues and a lot of bugs and things like that. But I think they probably build on what works and what doesn't, and then they minimize what doesn't work, and they spend the whole year doing that. And then, if the game's sales start to like slow down, then you maybe start thinking about like, okay, here are our plans for monetization. Let's act on one of these. In the meantime, just getting more people to buy the game. I mean, 5 million sold in 3 days. You think like that game could, if it can maintain any of this momentum over the next, 5 years, could get to 40 million copies sold if it's able to like maintain much of that momentum. That would be more than enough money, and you wouldn't necessarily need to start relying on microtransactions. You can just do the very common Steam strategy for a game made by a smaller team, which is just keep selling the game. Just do what No Man's Sky does, do what Stardew Valley does, and just sell more copies of the game. Wait for a Steam sale, and then that holiday have a new free downloadable thing, and then just keep selling the game to new people. I think that's probably where they will end up. But we'll see. It's the game does feel like it's made by people who want to maximize on revenue as much as possible. So maybe they do go the route of really weird monetization. We'll see. I'm
curious, just before we get on to like the thing that it feels like everyone has been talking about over the weekend. This, along with like a few other games, I feel like every once or twice a year we have the conversation of like, oh, will PlayStation do an early access equivalent? Do you think this moves the needle at all for them? They see it selling this many copies?
Yeah, I mean, I think so a little bit. So this is the other side of the story of the sales that really strikes me. I think I've said for years, and to be fair, this goes back to a Chris Kohler article on Wired from maybe 10 years ago. And it's like, where can the next Minecraft happen? Where can the next PUBG happen? Where can these things happen? And it's always Steam. And clearly, still very much Steam. But Xbox actually is getting in on this a little bit by having this game in early or preview. They call it the preview program on Xbox, and having it in Game Pass and just offering up to people. And like they are getting a little bit of that shine in a way that they really missed out on this almost every time before when one of these games has popped up out of nowhere. Even games that would have been like, you maybe could have predicted that, like Baldur's Gate 3, they just completely missed the boat. And it's like, well, now this time they were able to like cash in on their lucky numbers. Now, I don't know if that is that indicative, like they are positioning the Xbox platform and the preview program and Game Pass to replicate the success in the future, or is this just luck? Because did they have to like go out and search for this game and bring it into the fold manually? Because if they have to, you have to do that. Then it just comes down to being able to spot something and say, "Hey, we want to get behind this." And that is, I don't think that's reliable in terms of, oh, anything can happen on this platform and we can make a ton of money off of it. But at the very least, like they are on board on this one and they are getting some shine. So I do think that PlayStation looks over to this and be like, "What? Why don't we let unfinished games on PlayStation? We let like all other kinds of bullshit that are effectively unfinished crap onto our store." And listen, I'm all in favor of unfinished crap. People should know that about me. I love that when you put that on your game store. I really do. But it, like, why PlayStation draws some arbitrary line between, well, this, we are telling you this one's unfinished, so we can't put it out on PlayStation 5. It's a little strange. What do you think, Lexi? Do you think that they're going to shift this strategy?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who owns the Popeye game on PS5,
right,
and I know that Sony would never release an unfinished product on their storefront. As someone who owns a copy of base Cyberpunk, I know that they'd never allow an unfinished product on their storefront. Yeah, I don't know. It's all terminology, and I'm sure that it's like you'd be shocked how much of it is down to the strongly held opinions of someone in a boardroom, and like their moral standing on this, of how this would look to investors or something like that. I think that like the more these games that do pop off, the more the pressure does get added to them. But I'm not sure if Palworld, depending on how this attention that it's getting goes over the next couple of weeks, what way it turns, Sony will either be like, "Oh, damn it, we could have gone in on the ground floor of this," or they'll be like, "We dodged a fucking bullet."
Yep.
Not being involved in this, which I think kind of goes on to the next story.
Yes. So the next story, Palworld embroiled in AI and Pokemon plagiarism controversy. This is from Andy Robinson at VGC. Steam's newest hit survival game, Palworld, has been accused of plagiarizing designs from Pokemon as social media users negatively highlight its creator's historical association with generative AI tools. Palworld by Japanese studio Pocket Pair released into early access on PC and Xbox on Friday and immediately became a breakout success, with its creators claiming 2 million in sales in 24 hours. The huge launch exposure inevitably reignited discourse that has followed Palworld since its announcement around its character design's apparent similarities to Pokemon. Although the gameplay of Palworld is closer to survival games like Ark and Rust than Game Freak's series, many social media users have noted that the obvious influences its character designs have taken from the Nintendo series. Following Palworld's release on Friday, some Twitter users collated perceived similarities between Palworld's pals and Pokemon. "It's not even subtle about its ripoffs. How much else has it stolen?" wrote one user. Another added, "I want to like Palworld, but I don't know if I could support running existing Pokemon through a fuser and passing them off as new IP." The situation is further muddled in the eyes of some by Pocket Pair's historical relationship with generative AI tools. Artist Zaytree noted on Twitter that one of its previous titles was AI Art Imposter, a game which literally utilizes an AI image generator as its core mechanic. The user also highlighted multiple historical Twitter posts by Pocket Pair's CEO, Takuro Mizobe, in which he appeared to praise the potential of AI image generators for content creation. The use of generative AI is a significant pressure point in many creative industries, including video games. We'll take a break there. There's more to this here that we're going to get to. But I got to say, whether it's using AI or not, it's just not really my issue with it. Obviously, AI has a lot of problems associated with taking away jobs. This is like someone coming out of nowhere, probably just, I don't know. I'm not going to defend it. I'm definitely not. I don't care about that. I just don't care. It's not registering on my issues with this game. If it's like a personal line for you, I totally get it. But it's more just like, you're probably not, even if you're not using AI, there's still some issues here in terms of This just looks like you lifted it wholesale from another game. What do you think, Lexi?
Yeah, I think, again, it comes back to similarly to what I said earlier of like, yeah, people are angry at this for stealing, ideas from $1 billion company. I'm like ambivalent towards it because I just don't think it's a very good game. And yeah, I think that people have really, really gotten knives out with this game in a way that I wasn't expecting. And I'm not quite sure where I fall on it, because on one hand, I'm like, yeah, video game design is iterative, and, what else is going to happen in the video game industry other than we iterate on ideas? On the other hand, I don't think this game is particularly iterative in its iterativeness. It's kind of just lifting wholesale different elements from games that it knows are popular and then presenting them to you in the exact same way as they're presented in that game or in the games that they're taking from, and that being the entire hook. There's not much, like, when a game iterates, it's usually doing something better than the previous game, or it's doing something different. At least it's changing something. Every element of Palworld feels like an unchanged version of like multiple games that have been put together in such a way that it seems like it's kind of its own thing, but when you scratch away with it, at it even a little bit, you realize like, oh, each element of this is just exactly what it's taking from other more popular thing. Yeah, the AI side of it is like, yeah, if they're using AI, that's kind of shitty because they should get actual artists to make their thing. But then I don't know if that's any better, because then you're getting actual artists to be complicit in stealing designs. So yeah, like I don't know what to think of this game. Like, I just don't care a lot of the time. Or I look at it and I just go, I don't know, man, that just seems like some bullshit. Sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of it goes back to Flappy Bird for me, where I'm like, Flappy Bird, people, hey, this just like stole Mario's, like the elements from Mario's world and used it as the obstacles in the game, mostly being the pipes from Mario, but the background also looked very Mario. And so people are like, well, we have to stand against this. They're stealing from Nintendo. And my position is always, that's fucking Nintendo's problem. I don't give a shit. Like, yeah. What does that have to do with me? If someone's like copied my stuff, yeah, okay, I would probably try to get people angry on my behalf. But if someone didn't get angry on my behalf, they're like, man, I got my own problems. I'm sorry. You go sue them then. If Nintendo and the Pokemon company want to sue them for this, go for it. They're gonna have a tough time proving this, likely. It reminds me of like the way copyright works for dance, where it's like you are like dance moves, you can steal anyone's dance move. Like, you cannot copyright a dance move. What you can copyright is choreography. You can if it's a choreographed dance and it's a sequence of moves, you can copyright that. So the idea that like, well, Palworld is taking like little elements of different Pokemon and slapping them together. Well, that's like taking a bunch of dance moves and making a new dance. They're like, now clearly there's a line, and where that line is could be determined in a courtroom, and maybe this game is on the wrong side of that line. But there's definitely going to be an argument to be made that like, no, we've figured out a way to make our own new thing. And yeah, sure, it looks very similar, but we were inspired, but we made new things based on those inspirations. This is just not cut and dry. That doesn't mean the Pokemon company won't sue. Nintendo loves to sue. Maybe they like bring their very good lawyers in. And if they do, I would be worried if I were at this company and be like, okay, yeah, we're going to go in there, and that company's going to know exactly how to attack this particular point that they're going after. And even just being sued might discourage the studio. It's
expensive. Yeah.
Right. And they might be like, you know what, let's settle. Here's some money. We promise to use more original designs in the future, and we will change the ones that are currently in there. They easily could get to that goal if they wanted to. I just come back to me personally looking at this game. I don't know. I kind of video gaming is all about stealing ideas. From the very beginning. It was, Space War. I've said this a million times before. I'll say it a million times in the future. Space War was the first game, and when video games became plural, when we got the second video game, it was an arcade version of that. It was a clone. It was a copy, and that's a good thing, because those iterations and that creativity that happens when people steal, for the most part, leads to something new. And I think that's kind of what's happening here a little bit. Yeah, it's very similar to a lot of other things, but I think the combination of Pokemon into an Ark. Now, Ark does have creatures that you go out and capture, but it's like, I don't know, the way that they thought about here, it's a little bit different than Ark. And in some ways, I find it much more, maybe not compelling, but it's, again, more pleasant. It's simpler. It's more approachable than Ark. Ark is very obtuse in a lot of ways. Or at least it was for me when I tried to play it. And this has been anything but obtuse. It is like because they are like, we are going for that crowd that is into Pokemon. We're going to skew a little bit younger. So let's just make things work the way you expect them to work. And that, to me, that's enough of innovation to at least justify some curiosity. Again, I play the game and I'm not like blown away, but I'm definitely like, I am enjoying my time enough, I suppose.
Yeah, and I also think that like a lot of this is probably down to the conversation that we're having now is down to how you and me view this game qualitatively itself.
Yes.
Because you look at something like Bombush Cyberpunk, and the conversation around that most certainly wasn't, this is a ripoff, but that's because pretty much that game came out to critical acclaim.
Right.
And I'm not saying Bombush Cyberpunk is a ripoff. It's not. It does its own thing. It has its own story. It has its own designs, but it iterates in that way. But we didn't have this conversation because I think the feelings towards it from the beginning were a lot more positive. So yeah, I'm curious where this goes. I'm sure that this is going to wind up becoming a long-running story, especially if Nintendo get involved.
You're right, yeah.
And knowing Nintendo of America, I highly doubt they won't. They, will sit this one out. So yeah, with just the amount of conversation that has happened around this game and the amount of attention it's gotten, like it's 4:00 on a Monday and it has 300,000 people watching on Twitch. So I can imagine this game becoming something of a conversation piece for the next couple of months. Yeah, I'm curious where it'll go.
Yeah. To kind of continue this story just a little bit here. Now, if you did want to argue that this was plagiarism, if you did want to argue that this is copyright infringement, one of the things you would do is be like, well, here's a pattern that shows how this game copied from Pokemon. And that is emerging. Like, I want to just put it out there. I believe, personally, that I don't know, I'm believing this, that they took all these models from Pokemon and basically just remixed them a little bit. But underneath, it is still a bunch of Pokemon models. The evidence is coming out to suggest that is exactly what happened. People are alleging that these models in Palworld are basically just like they are the exact same proportions as a bunch of Pokemon models, basically. And a bunch of artists have said that would be impossible to just stumble upon that unless you were copying those models or tracing them or actually just ripping them from the game and then mixing them up a little bit in your in Blender or whatever, and then putting them back into your game. And there's several now examples of that's exactly what it looks like, where you can take a PAL, put it on top of a Pokemon, and you could see the proportions are exactly the same. There's some BGC has a story about this. Let's see if there's this video here where it's like they are transitioning back and forth between a PAL and a Pokemon model, and basically there is no difference. In fact, you look at it, it looks like one model, and then they move it a little bit, and you see, oh, there's actually two models there. But you can't tell because they are so one-to-one. I think that this evidence, if you have a good enough lawyer, you probably could get somewhere in court with this. Again, Lexi, I just don't know how much I personally care that they've done this. I think they've done it, and I just don't care. I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way of like I said on Twitter, like they stole from $1 billion company. Why should I care?
Right.
I care more about the fact that they made a game that I don't like. Like that's my vested interest in this, even as a journalist. And I think that like from a journalistic point of view, it's brazen. Like what they did is looking at some of the evidence, it's pretty ballsy what they've gone out and done there. Like you look at that sheep model that they have and you compare that to a Wooloo and you're like, oh, that's the same thing, except one of them standing behind a machine gun.
Mm-hmm.
I think where they'll have a very difficult time fighting this is with the untrained eye, with non-video game people. You look at like what was the name of that Street Fighter clone that came out that Capcom actually took to court, And people looked at that who didn't know video games, and they didn't know that this is a worse quality product. They just saw, oh, this is like the exact same game. You look at this, and you can imagine showing it Fighters History, Seraphis Kane in chat says. You imagine someone who doesn't know video games being bought this in Quash, or a jury being bought this in Quash, and them looking at it and being like, oh, these things look very similar. And it doesn't necessarily matter the mechanics as much because the mechanics aren't as visual. It's like, oh, these designs just straight up look very similar. So I do think that like Nintendo will have something to stand on. But also I'm just like, okay, I don't need to be in the courtroom when it happens. I'm not going to be reporting on it. Unlike the Microsoft Activision stuff, I'm not going to be joining the Zoom calls to listen in because I just don't care.
Yeah, and for me, like some people in the chat say, "Hey, I'm an artist. That I care about this." I get that. I just I think my position goes back to like I go on YouTube a lot and find stuff for my kids, and we stumble on like channels where it's like little girls playing with IP based action figures and dolls, and they're making little stories, and I want to be like make sure that we have like a pretty large buffer between them doing what is clearly copyright infringement. They're making stories based on Disney's IP or whatever, and being like, oh, I just don't give a fuck that they're doing this. This is entertaining. My kids like it. It builds more of an affinity for them between them and the characters or whatever. I kind of want like there'll be a large space where people who are mostly doing tiny little things. A lot of times these channels are massive. They make a lot of money. And again, like if these big companies want to step in and get their cut, whatever. I also don't care about that. It is copyright law. When I see this stuff, I'm like, okay, this is people. Yeah, it's jazz. People said it's like just video game jazz, taking something and riffing on it. I kind of feel like in the end, this is like part of the process of creativity. It gets us to a better thing in the end.
I should also say, like, I do care about, if someone's stealing from an artist and is taking something that they might be selling, that's shitty.
Of course.
If Palworld is doing this, I don't think Pokemon's going to sell less. I don't think the next Pokemon is going to sell less because Palworld is on the market.
Yeah. And of course, I'm not going to stand in their way if they want to try to claim damages. If they want to go do that, go to town. Obviously, they have a budget. Now, protecting little artists from it being stolen from big companies, it's a completely different scenario. If the Pokemon company stole an artist, a small artist on DeviantArts, a little creation, and they're like, this is the next Pokemon that everyone's going to want to have sex with, and we're putting in the game. Clearly,
if they steal my design for a fucko, then I'm going to be mad.
Yeah, I guess maybe this also just goes back to the comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. Pokemon Company's pretty comfortable. I'm just not worried about comforting them myself. They can sleep on their bed of money, and then if they want to use that to go sue somebody, they can. All right, let's take a quick break. When we get back, we have a handful more headlines to get to. We'll do all of that right after this. All right, we're back into it. And the next headline, Walmart is reportedly going to throw out copies of Starfield. But you're excited about that, Lexi. From Dalton Cooper at Game Rant.
I'm so glad you had me on an episode to talk about a bunch of games that I don't give a shit about and don't really like. This is great. Everyone's going to love me after this.
It looks as though Walmart will begin throwing out physical copies of Xbox Series X console exclusive game Starfield starting early next week. With the rise of digital media, physical media sales have been steadily shrinking. Major retailers have started pulling out of the physical media business entirely, with Best Buy recently ending its sales of DVDs and Blu-ray discs. There have been rumblings that Walmart is preparing to make its way out of the physical media business as well. A report from last year suggested that Walmart was going to stop selling physical Xbox games, and now there is more evidence to back up those claims. Some Walmart employees have shared memos on social media revealing the order to dispose of Xbox Series X console exclusive game Starfield. Basically, what's happening here is like they're marketing it down to 3 cents, and they're probably going to take it out back and destroy it. Like that happens pretty frequently in retail. People who've worked retail can tell you more stories about this than I can. I've just heard this has happened before. I don't know. I go into Walmart sometimes, Lexi, because I like to save money. So I'll go into a Walmart, and I'll usually walk past the game section if I don't go into it myself. And there's no one ever in there. There's never anybody. Back in the day, you would go in there and there would be 2 or 3 other people trying to get someone's attention to get a game out of the case. I don't know the last time in the last like literally 3, 4, 5 years that I saw someone getting a game out of a case at Walmart. This just does not seem like it's long for this world. And Starfield being a game that's on Game Pass, that like if you got the collector's edition, you got the little chip that was just a download code. Like it's such a digital game already, and now it's a game that like doesn't have a ton of ongoing love for it in the way that some games have. So it's like I bet it's a combination of factors. But being a huge game selling digitally probably is the biggest factor. And now these physical games are likely just sitting there and no one was going to get them. And if you were, you're just going to get it digitally anyhow or play it on Game Pass. This is not too surprising, Lexi. What do you think?
Yeah, as someone that lives in a country that now has no dedicated games retailer, and like for a very brief stint, some supermarkets stocked video games, not for very long. They stopped doing that pretty quickly. Now we pretty much only have one toy store chain that stocks video games. And like they do numbers because they're the only game in town, but nobody is vying for that competition. Nobody wants to get in on that market because it's just not what it used to be. The physical games market isn't what it used to be. Like, is this a shame? I don't know, because I don't know, like, again, it's Starfield. Is this something that people are that invested in having physical copies of these days? This seems like a game that a lot of people would be sort of playing only on Game Pass. Like, I don't know anyone. The people I know who bought the physical editions of Starfield all regretted it. And they were like, great, now I have this watch that is fucking useless and really doesn't work. And I have this cool box, and I guess the cool box is cool. Does that watch work?
Yeah, I mean, it works as well. I was showing off my Starfield watch, everybody. It works, I mean, as well as any other like generic smartphone watch. Mine is not broken at the very least. I know some people's have.
But yeah, I think that like if Walmart totally stops selling physical games, that's a shame, because then that's just another outlet not selling physical games, and that's a hammer blow to preservation in the industry. And Walmart, it does seem like it's one of the bigger purveyors of physical video games. I'm curious.
Everywhere. Yeah, we have Walmarts everywhere. Most small towns don't have other stores because they have a Walmart. And we could talk about the systemic issue of Walmart pushing out other stores, but that's just the reality is you probably do have a Walmart close to you in some way, even if you're in a rural area of the country. If you're in a place that doesn't have great internet, it's very likely that you end up going to Walmart to get a game instead. So it's like I think people hear this and it's worrisome that hey, this is no, I need this still. They have there is no sign that my internet is going to improve and that I'm going to be able to get the speeds I need to comfortably download games digitally and feel good about that. And so yeah, I think people hear this and it's like, well, this doesn't sound great. And I think that's exactly what's happened here. Does this sound like bad news to you? Well, yeah, I think this is what's happening. These companies are looking at selling games as a the kind of thing that actually this is taking up quite a lot of space, but not many people are buying it. And yeah, maybe some stores are doing better than others, and those are the stores that are already less trafficked because they are in less populated areas. So it's like we look at this video game sales as a whole across all our stores, and it's down. Yeah, I think that the physical...
It is interesting because there really does seem to be two lines of thought, at least when you look at industry analysts. Like, sometimes you'll see someone be like, oh, it's not worth it for Xbox to have a physical version of Senua's Sacrifice anymore. And then you look at other analysts and they're like, oh, Alan Wake 2 not having physical copies on store shelves hurt that game's sales massively. So it does... It's one of those things where
both
usually...
are true, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, if it is both of these things being true, or if it's that people are looking at the same data and getting different impressions from them.
Well, we definitely, and that's almost certainly part of it, right? That different people have different ideas of what they need the data to be telling them in order for them to greenlight a physical version of the game. But I mean, while people said that Alan Wake 2 didn't, its sales were hurt by not having a physical version, they didn't do a physical version. And they probably made that choice for similar reasons. I think Epic being their backer there, probably a big part of that. They're not so interested in working with retail. So I bet that was frustrating for Remedy. But yeah, I mean, I guess the question here, Lexi, I mean, does the next Xbox have a disk drive? Is that where we're heading?
If we're going off of that leaked stuff from a couple of months back, it will be adorably all digital, whatever the fuck that means. The Xbox Series X Plus or whatever they call it, in their copy they called it adorably all digital. So I think there's a very real possibility that the next half-step Xbox doesn't have any disk drive, and then the real question is, that will be them testing the water, and then, because we know that those more powerful editions don't sell as many copies, so it's not going to be their flagship, sales thing. But the real question will be, whenever the next Xbox comes out, the full next Xbox, the full step forward in a generation, will that thing be all digital or not? And yeah, it's one of those things where I'm sure they have it planned out either way. They have it planned out for if ISPs get their shit together and places in rural America, places in rural Europe, places in rural everywhere get better internet. Will we then go down the route of everything is digital now? Or if internet availability doesn't improve, which it very may well not, they'll go, okay, well, we'll bite the cost because there's still a market for physical games.
Yeah, the PS5 Slim is like the new standard PS5, right? And that doesn't have a disk drive. You buy the attachment. That's right?
Yeah, you buy the attachment.
Right. So, I mean, again, it feels inevitable, right? This is them slowly shifting the market. The Overton window is shifting so that we all just kind of accept it. And there's going to be people who be like, no, I am physical to the end. I'm seeing that in chat. And I get that. But these companies seem to be believing that they're going to be able to get the bulk of the industry to move over, and then they will have hey, you can attach a disk drive if you want. I mean, clearly, though, you see the problem with that, right? Lexi, we know, if there's an optional disk drive, most people will be like, I might get it later, or I'm not going to get it, or sure, it's nice to have the option, I'll see, and they're going to get the cheaper model that doesn't have the drive. And
it needs a firmware patch when you plug it in, and then in 10 years' time, you can no longer get that firmware patch because the server's down.
Right. Yeah. And it's and we see most people are going to do the path of least resistance, and they're going to go all digital. And then I think, is there a possibility for the industry to support a boutique physical games sort of cottage industry off to the side for most of these games? Probably not. It'll be with a select few. It'll be like what's happening with limited run games. But I think I don't think it'll be much bigger. I think
that's a really interesting point, because something that I heard earlier last year is that Limited Run as a company, and a lot of the companies like them, are moving away from indie games. They're like, listen, the money in doing physical indie games was there when the Switch was new, and people liked the Switch so much and were buying loads of Switch games. But now that money is drying up very quickly, which is why you see pretty much all of Limited Run's new announcements since they became part of Embracer have been big publisher deals. They've been Konami, they've been Capcom, they've been all of these. They don't have any interest in doing the indie games anymore. And so I'm curious if they are trying to make that pivot of future-proofing to when you get to the point that most big publishers aren't doing physical versions. They go, well, we'll do your limited editions. They did one for Dead Space. They did Limited Run, and I Am 8-Bit did the Dead Space limited edition. EA didn't do that. It was Limited Run. So I'm curious if that is the direction that those companies try to go in, of trying to create a new type of boutique for themselves. Because the one that they had, which was selling indie games, isn't there anymore.
Yeah, and it's I think we could expect Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft not to have the passion and the interest to run some little side boutique physical game thing to sell. They'll do it occasionally. They'll still have a collector's edition, but that's almost certainly going to have a digital code inside of it. We've already seen it going in that direction. I mean, I try to square this circle. I try to make it make sense where it's okay, people are still buying vinyl. So clearly there's a way for this to make sense for video games. And I don't know if that does make sense for video games, because the pricing is different. The modeling's different. The production would probably be something that, I don't know. If you're a band and you want to make a deal with one of these boutique things to put your thing out, I think it's probably easier to make that happen. If you are a developer working inside of a big corporation, as an employee for them, because a band, they have a deal with these big corporations, but they're still their own entity. And it's a contract that they have. If you're a developer working for Nintendo, you don't have any say over what happens with your game. And I think that you kind of need that say in order for the passion of the people making the product to end up getting a physical version in a world where the disc reader is not included with the system and it's sold separately. And it's like, okay, well, this is for people who still want discs. I just think naturally we're going to end up in a situation where it's like, you say that, but then you're not actually making any discs for these games. What's happening here? And they're just going to smile and be like, welcome to the all digital future. We did it, everybody. So yeah, it's rough out there. And for people that collect games, I feel for you. 343 says Halo Infinite is done with seasons as it shifts approach. This is from Andy Robinson at VGC. Halo Infinite Season 5, released last October, will be the game's last. Developer 343 has confirmed. Instead, the studio is shifting its approach to an operations model starting on January 30th, in which it will offer 20 tiers of free unlockable rewards every 4 to 6 weeks. Halo Infinite's next free update, Operation Spirit of Fire, will add new customization options, a new map, Forge editions, and more on January 30th. The move away from larger, longer-running seasons represents a significant change for Infinite. Speaking during a live stream on Friday, 343's senior community manager, John Juzicek, emphasized that the company would continue to support Infinite in 2024. He also made it clear, though, that they're working on new games at 343. So this is like, yeah, we're supporting this game while we are looking ahead to what's next. This shift feels like it is marking something along those lines, right, Lexi? Where, yeah, Halo Infinite is going to enter, it's not entering like its end of life, but they are trying to shift down the amount of support so that they can keep the game going, but they can also move resources over to other things. And that's probably the correct move, right?
Yeah, I mean, I played a lot of Infinite multiplayer when it first came out, and so I remember when it was super fucking barren, and it was like, just play the same maps over and over again. And I did, because it fucking felt great, because it was really good Halo. But I get the impression that, like, this probably would have been a more healthy strategy for it early on. Like, the small
Agreed.
drip feed of content quickly, sounds like it would have made a lot more sense for that game when people were so starved for new updates at the beginning of the game's life cycle. I also can see it being a less onerous task of not having to do seasons, not having to do cinematics every season, not having to have a battle pass every season. Like, that stuff we kind of forget about, but like, there is a lot of work that goes into developing, what goes where in a battle pass? How do we make this feel good? How do we make, the rewards feel good this season? Designing all of those things, even the things in the battle pass that you look at and you're like, I don't fucking want this. That has to be designed. Whereas if they're lowering the amount of stuff that they put in and it is worthwhile stuff, I think that's maybe better for the game in the long term. And if they're saying that like this allows them to work on more projects, then I know 343 have had such a fucking harsh run of it. Every time you look at the history of 343 and Halo since Bungie left, it just feels like this weird. Like, I remember getting into video games like news around 2013, and the story around then was like, oh, Bungie are off making their new thing, and 343 is trying to find its footing. And here we are in 2024, and every time people talk about 343, it's like, oh, 343 is trying to find its footing with this franchise. And it's been 10 years. And I just wonder what the tone is like inside that studio these days, what the tone is like from Xbox management these days.
Yeah.
Because they know it's Halo. They know that, like, there is still an audience for Halo. The Halo TV series did well enough to get a second season. Like, it's still a name that carries weight. It doesn't carry as much weight as it used to. But, like, they just don't seem to know how to modernize it in a way that other companies seem to have figured out for their games.
Yeah, and it's I mean, I want them to keep trying. I think Halo Infinite is a game that is a lot of fun to play, and they just got to piece some of those other aspects together. I think the season model was the wrong mode, because it was, you go months at a time and people get sick of the season, and it creates an opportunity for people to leave the game, and it makes it that much harder to bring them back when the next season comes, because I think most people assume the same thing's going to happen. Yeah, I'll play it, and then I'm going to wish there was something new, and there won't be anything new for a very long time. I think shortening the length of time of these operations, that's a good idea. Whether or not that it's substantial enough, that'll be a thing for the community to figure out. I'm mostly just hoping that they figure out a way to get this awesome Halo gameplay into a game that everyone is very happy with, because I want to be playing that game regularly, and I don't want to have to be dealing with everyone being like, this is not what I wanted, or this is it doesn't have enough content. I'm like, yeah, okay, but it's fun to shoot people. Can we just do that? And I'm not going to try to beg people to come back to the game. So I think a new game is probably the answer, and it'll probably come in the next 3 to 4 years. That Halo Battle Royale project we reported earlier this week, Nick from Xbox Era said that he heard it's dead. Seems like that would make a lot of sense too if they are moving on to something new. There's a handful of rumors here. We'll try to hit these pretty quickly. Quake 6 is in development at Machine Games. This is from Kieran Harris at Game Reactor. I think Nick from Xbox Era once again mentioned that this is something he's heard before. I've heard mentioned that they're working on something new with Quake at Machine Games for a long time. And then at that Xbox Developer Direct, there was a whiteboard that had AKE space 6 on the background. So like the last half of the words Quake 6. Hey, they're probably making a Quake game over at Machine Games. They made those Quake remasters that everyone loves, and that was probably them practicing for development of a real new Quake game. And here we are. They're probably making that, right, Lexi?
Oh yeah, and they should totally do the thing that they did between Quake 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 of just make it totally fucking different. Just like make it completely unrelated, make it barely feel like the same franchise. Fuck it, why not? But yeah, Machine Games, I think that they make really good sounding guns in games. I love how they sound.
Yeah.
Their gameplay can sometimes be like, okay, I'm dying a little bit too quickly for the power fantasy that I'm meant to be inspired to have. I would be curious to see what these years without them releasing a game has done for their gameplay chops. And I'm pretty sure those rumors at one point that they were like collaboration with Arcane on level design. Yeah, they collaborated with Arcane on level design for Wolfenstein Youngblood. And I'm curious if any of those learnings of level design have come through for a new Quake game. Yeah, I'd be super interested to see what they do with that.
Let's see. Final Fantasy 16 is coming to Xbox. This is from Vicky Blake at Eurogamer. Once again, Nick over at Xbox Era staying busy. Apparently the same person that told Nick that Visions of Mana would be in the Xbox Developer Direct mentioned that something would be happening with Final Fantasy 16, and the exclusivity for that is supposed to expire in around the summer of this year for the PlayStation 5. The game is definitely going to come to PC. That hasn't happened yet. I imagine that probably happens first, and then it comes to Xbox. But hey, Final Fantasy 16 is a game that I think is okay. I enjoyed what I played of it, and I don't really want to play any more of it. But hey, people would play it on other stuff, right?
Yeah, I had it on my top 10 game of the year list as like, this could have been any of the big AAA games that like I liked, but I didn't like adore. It was number 10. Yeah. I think it beat out Spider-Man and it beat out something else. But like, I enjoy the act of playing that game. I think that I've said it before. There are like flaws in that game that are so big you could like drive a bus through them, and they're very easy to articulate why those things are bad. But that makes it easier for me to like put them aside because I can explain to you, okay, I don't like this because of the way it portrays women and the way that it like portrays an all-white society for some reason, and the way that like its pacing isn't great and the way that its missions are way too MMO-y. I can put that all to one side and just enjoy the fun combat.
Yes.
And stupid action and good voice acting. I think that it being on more platforms is probably good for it because I don't think it probably sold super great on PS5 when the PS5 was still growing its user base. I got the impression that game did not sell what they expected it to sell at the speed they expected it to sell.
Well, it's Square Enix, so that's a story as old as time. And then final rumor here. What's that?
Weird, they're disappointed?
Yeah, I know, right? Can you believe it? Square Enix?
It's probably Eidos's fault.
Oh, I'm sure. It's someone in the West. It's one of those studios. All right, let's see here. Long-rumored Lego Deku Tree. Deku? I say Deku. Deku Tree set claimed to launch this autumn. Some Ben Lyons at Game Reactor. Yes. Someone who has had a lot of success with Lego rumors is now claiming that this is real and will be coming, and I would love that.
As someone with a bunch of unbuilt Lego sets in in a closet, that I'm like, I'm gonna make that BD1 any fucking day now.
Same here. That's the one I keep looking at. I'm like, shit, I should make that. I love that little freak.
I have a bunch of like, Lego flower sets, and I'm like, these would look really nice if I made them. Fucking never make them. And yes, that would be great.
Let's see. Last here, there's a rumor that Hayden Christensen is going to play Shadow in the Sonic movie, the third one. I think that's a good fit. I think Hayden Christensen would be great as Shadow the Hedgehog. Just
as someone who fucking hates Sonic and, you know, doesn't have any love for the prequels, that's a fucking great casting decision.
It's a great cast because, like, Shadow's moody and edgy, and Hayden Christensen played the most moody and edgy character of all time in Anakin Skywalker. I think that would be fantastic. I hope they end up doing that. And then I hope Shadow just uses his gun and just shoots up that whole movie. Just has a great time. All right, let's see here. Actually, one last thing. Super Kiwi 64, that game I really like. Let's get an update, more levels and stuff. It looks pretty cool. It's honestly, it looks like a Super Mario 64 fan like remake, but for an actual game here. And I'm very excited. I like Super Kiwi 64 a whole bunch.
Yeah, I wrote about this game when I started at the Gamer, and that was over a year and a half ago. That was a while ago. This has been out for a while.
All right. Yeah. The original game came out a while ago. It was great. This the new updates that's going to add It's going to have new levels, new graphical features. I don't know. It's going to have new stuff, new cutscenes, whole bunch of new stuff. Looking forward to it.
Adding to the deep lore.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I have a new poll question I'm going to get to. We have the poll from last week, but first, Lexi, why don't you tell people where they can find you, what you have going on, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at basically Lexi, both of those ending in I's. You can find the website I run at the Start Menu or startmenu.co.uk. We had a bunch of content over the winter. We still have some of that content going up of our winter spectacular of people who sort of came in late. I am reviewing a game at the moment. I just submitted the copy for it. That is about as much as I can say. But yeah, keep an eye on my socials for that. And I think I talked to Jan about being on the Bombcast Revengeance this week, so I might be helping you out with that this week.
Yes, that's the plan. Looking forward to that. All right, new poll, the last poll question. Are you going to play Palworld? 65% said no, 35% said yes. I had to say yes because I did indeed play Palworld. And then I played a little bit more over the weekend. I'll be interested to see, like, if over time more people are like sort of won over, or if this is a flash in the pan. I think it's hard to tell at this point. I think it's easy to look at it and be like, oh, this will actually go away in a couple of weeks when real games start coming out. And I don't know. I bet if this studio is able to weather some of this early criticism, they can get some updates in there pretty quickly and keep people interested. I don't know that Ark and Rust.
Until the Justice League comes out, though, Justice League comes out, it won't have much of a chance.
Everything's done.
There's such a similar market, like it's just going to eat its lunch.
That's right. It's screwed. All right. New poll question I have written down here. Have you bought a physical video game from Walmart in the last year? Yes or no? And if you don't have a Walmart, you could just put no or just not vote. That's fine. That's allowed too. We'll discuss that on Game Mess Mornings on Wednesday. Tomorrow we have the Bombcast, so tune in for that. Here on Giant Bomb. Speaking of
Giant,
it's
a busy day. Yeah. Tomorrow's a busy day. Everyone should tune in.
Yes, tomorrow is going to be a busy day. There will be a lot to talk about. Looking forward to that. God, there's so many games to be playing. And I spent some time with Palworld. I guess I'll talk about that on the Bombcast as well, because I did spend a little bit more time with it. Let's see what else. We're going to figure out what's going on. I have to take Emmy to a speech appointment today. We'll be doing that. So I was planning to do something big today. Might not be able to make that work. Maybe I'll do Tale of the Grubb instead today. We might be able to fit that in. I'll be playing some more Tale of the Grubb, which is Tale of the Sun. Started that last week. That was really weird and fun and cool. We'll be playing more of that this week. And then look out for some pretty big Mario Olympics sort of stuff. We're gonna do some races in various games. Not a whole bunch this week. At least one will happen this week though, or we're gonna try to. That'll happen here on Giant Bomb. Lexi, thank you so much for speaking with me today about video games. I really appreciate it.
No worries. I've just about caught my breath. Running home.
Next time I'll give you even less of a warning so that we can really get the full running through the door.
Hell yeah.
And then thank you everybody for listening. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself and goodbye.